Awesome. Hello and welcome to the 2024 inaugural Talking Book Talk. My name is Abby. I am the Talking Book Librarian, and I'm going to give you a little spiel about just the book talks that I do every time. Thank you for joining us for our book talk series for 2024. These videos will be recorded and out on the Indiana State Library's YouTube channel, as well as the Facebook page that we have for Talking Books. The purpose of these book talks is to provide book ideas for book clubs and to include questions for you to answer for yourself or in a book club setting. These videos will remain online in perpetuity, so you can decide to read these books whenever you'd like. If you are interested in this book or any of the others, give the Talking Book employees a call at 800-622-4970. Feel free to pause the video at any time to answer any of the questions or continue your discussion. The book we will be discussing today is The Lincoln Highway by Amor Towles. And I'll go to the next slide. That is a picture of the front of the book. It's pretty striking with the black and white background. It looks like there might be a train and a car in the background from the 1950s. And then Amor Towles' name is in blue, and then the Lincoln Highway is in red. I'll continue. About the author. There's a little picture of him down there in the circle. Born and raised in the Boston area, Amor Towles graduated from Yale College and received an MA in English from Stanford University. Having worked as an investment professional in Manhattan for over 20 years, he now devotes himself full-time to writing. His first novel, Rules of Civility, published in 2011, was a New York Times bestseller in both hardcover and paperback, and was ranked by the Wall Street Journal as one of the best books of 2011. The book was optioned by Lionsgate to be made into a feature film, and its French translation received the 2012 Prix Fitzgerald, and I assume that's an award. His second novel, A Gentleman in Moscow, published in 2016, was also a New York Times bestseller and was ranked as one of the best books of 2016 by the Chicago Tribune, the Miami Herald, the Philadelphia Inquirer, the St. Louis Dispatch, and NPR. Both novels have been translated in over 15 languages. Mr. Towles, who lives in Manhattan with his wife and 2 children, is an ardent fan of early 20th century painting, 1950s jazz, 1970s cop shows, rock and roll on vinyl, obsolete accessories, manifestos, breakfast pastries, pasta, liquor, snow days, Tuscany, Provence, Disneyland, Hollywood, the cast of Casablanca, 007, Captain Kirk, Bob Dylan, early, mid, and late phases, the wee hours, card games, cafes, and the cookies made by both of his grandmothers. Now we'll get into some discussion questions after we've learned a little bit about the author. So the first question is, how do you think Emmett, Duchess, Woolley, and Sally's various upbringings, particularly their relationships to their parents, have shaped them? How have their parents' choices influenced their own desires and ambitions? When you were 18, which aspects of your parents' lives did you hope to emulate, and which did you hope to cast aside? Next question. Early in the novel, Emmett meets Sister Agnes, a nun who describes the faith of children who look upon a miracle with awe and wonder, yes, but without disbelief. From the context, it's fairly clear that Sister Agnes is referencing Billy in her remark. How would you describe Billy's personality? While he is the youngest and least experienced character in the novel, one could argue that he has the greatest influence on other characters. What is it about Billy that makes this so? Next question. Throughout the novel, an array of stories are recalled. Stories drawn from Professor Abernathy's compendium, from the vaudevillian world of Duchess's father, from Shakespeare, cinema, and the Bible. What role do stories play in the shaping of different characters' lives and personalities? Are these stories a productive or counterproductive force? What story, whether handed down to you from your parents or experienced in a novel or film, had a particularly strong influence on shaping you as a young person? Next question. This novel takes place in the mid-1950s, a period of peace, prosperity, and upward mobility in the US, a period in which television was in its infancy and which came just before the advent of rock and roll, the modern civil rights movement, and the sexual revolution. How does the era shape the journey of the characters, if at all? What aspect of their journeys are unique to their times? And what aspects were shared by you when you were on the verge of adulthood? Next question. The city of New York is 1,000 cities rolled into one. How does New York differ in the eyes of Emmett, Duchess, Woolley, and Billy? Next question. The tone of each character's chapters differs from the tone of the other characters' chapters. How would you describe the style of the different characters' chapters? To what degree does the style shape your sense of the characters' personalities? How does reading Duchess's first-person narrative influence you in comparison to Emmett's third-person narrative? Emmett's father leaves Emmett a quotation from Ralph Waldo Emerson's essay, Self-Reliance, as a part of his legacy. Do you agree with Emerson's argument that what is within the individual is new to nature, and that we have no idea of what we can achieve until we've tried? What about Emerson's idea strikes you as particularly American? What about this novel strikes you as particularly American? What does self-reliance mean to Emmett, to Duchess, and to Sally? There are a number of smaller legacies in the novel. In addition to the Emerson quotation left to Emmett, there are the recipes handed down to Sally, the officer's watch handed down in the Walcott family, the St. Christopher medal passed from Billy to Ulysses. What role do these small legacies play within the larger theme of the novel? What smaller legacy have you received that has meant a great deal to you? How would you describe each main character's transformation over the course of the novel? Which character do you think evolves most significantly? Which characters, in your opinion, found what they were looking for? Do you have a favorite character, and why did you choose them? And this question is actually written by the author, which is why it says my books. But the question is, a question for those of you who have read my other books, Immortal's books. While Rules of Civility covers a year in Katie's life, and A Gentleman in Moscow spans 3 decades, The Lincoln Highway takes place over just 10 days. How does the span of time affect the narrative and your experience of it? What are the benefits and limitations that come with reading a novel spanning days rather than years? While A Gentleman in Moscow and The Lincoln Highway differ in duration, the ending of the 2 books match each other in a very specific way. What is this commonality? And what are its implications when considering 2 stories side by side? Woolley's sister Sarah observes to Emmett, if you take a trait that by all appearances is a merit, a trait that is praised by pastors and poets, a trait that we have come to admire in our friends and hope to foster in our children, and you give it to some poor soul in abundance, it will almost certainly prove an obstacle to their happiness. Do you think this is true? What virtue do you think each of the main characters possess in excess? Given inflation, $50,000 in 1954 would be the equivalent of about $500,000 today. So at the end of your discussion, after you've had a chance to share a bottle of wine or a few cocktails with your partners, tell each other what you would do if you were suddenly given $500,000. And that question was also written by Immortals. And I got these discussion questions actually from his website. He wrote a reader's guide for the Lincoln Highway. which I think makes it a lot more personable and a lot more interesting because you actually get the author's opinions and questions about the book that he wrote. So he would be the best one to ask the questions because he's the one that wrote it. But now that brings me to the end of the question portion of today's book discussion. And now I would like to provide a few of my own thoughts on the book. Overall, I enjoyed the book. I'm not usually a historical fiction reader, like straight historical fiction, and the 1950s isn't always an era that I'm interested in reading about. I usually read maybe about the 1940s, but really I'm more interested in like the fantasy version, I guess, of those times. And I really enjoyed it. It was a very character-driven book. All of the characters had their own voices between the first person and the third person. Being able to write across points of view like that, I thought was really, really interesting. It does make me want to pick up A Gentleman in Moscow. I've heard that it has a lot of good things going for it, so I'll have to pick that one up next. I really did enjoy his writing. It was, beautifully written. The prose was fantastic, and the characters really, none of them outshined each other. But of course, they all had their own personalities and characteristics that I really enjoyed, and it was really written in a way that seemed real rather than characters of people. So overall, I really enjoyed it. I'll definitely pick up the next ones. And if you haven't, I suggest you do as well. If you enjoyed this book, I think you'll like his others. That will do it for us today. I will see you guys again in March. And thank you for coming to this book talk.